everybody for attending. I know that in today's world, trying to get a handle on our IT assets is an extremely difficult thing to do. One of the things we have to concern ourselves with is how do we know what we have that's going to be retiring? How do we know what we need to order? How do we know what's being received? How do we know what we have in stock? And how do we know what's being deployed? So all of these things come into consideration during our lifecycle management, and BCM has an excellent way of handling the ability to go ahead and get assets into the database in through the import functionality or through ScanStar, and we'll cover all of those to get these items in when you actually place an order for them, when you receive them at the dock, when you put them in the closet and have them available for deployment, when they're actually out there and deployed, or whether or not you're going to retire these assets or deprecate them. And by deprecating them, we have the ability of updating the CMDBs that we're attached to various locations so that we can we populate the CMDB for Remedy, which is Atrium, Footprints, Remedy Force. We tie and integrate into those CMDBs. But the neat thing about this is on the right side, you'll see that you can even customize the lifecycle statuses. So if you have something in stock in Pennsylvania versus Dallas, you can tag it so that you know what location these items are actually in stock at. You can add a loaner field so that any of your laptops or projectors or anything that you tend to loan to individuals, you can identify it as being loaned out and being assigned to a particular individual. We can group these assets. We have the ability to query them. We can report on them. So we can easily identify where all of our assets are in this lifecycle process. We can manually add devices to client management. The methods are we can add one device at a time using the create device method. We can use a CSV file to import multiple devices to a new device group, or we can use ScanStar, which is a RightStar proprietary software. There is a new version of ScanStar out there that dovetails and uses the BCM API functionality. So now you have the ability of using your smartphone, using the ScanStar app, and actually start scanning in those assets as you receive them or as you do inventory of your assets. So it makes it a really cool process. This method allows administrators to or report recipients advanced knowledge that devices are ordered and will be shipped. You have the ability to change lifecycle status to receive once they arrive at the ship to address, and that can be performed by a CSV file or by ScanStar. Over here, you're looking at a screenshot of part of the financial asset management cycle. So all of the life cycle statuses and all of the financial data are stored under each record, and that provides us to do financial asset management. On the far right of the screen, you can see where the life cycle status is set to receive. We populate the asset tag. We can put the location of where that device is actually being received at. We know the PO number, the invoice number, the warranty cost, the support cost, who the support provider is, support provider phone number, when we actually purchased it, when we got the invoice, and when we actually received it. And we can also populate when our support and warranty expiration dates expire. That way we can report on this and identify all of those devices that are about to expire on our warranty. We can tag those. We can make sure that we have a full understanding of what devices are coming off of warranty. We also know exactly what our purchase cost is. We can either do that for purchases or leased items. Devices without an agent. So basically there's two ways that we can get an understanding. We can either put an agent on our devices, and we have the ability to install with Windows OS, Linux OS, or Apple OS X, or we can do it without an agent by doing ScanStar or import via CSV. We can use Discovery using Nmap, or we can import all of our assets directly from Active Directory. We can also provide awareness of how many devices are available for deployment. We can create reports based on location, model, warranty expiration, by type, And in blue are all of the different device types that are pretty much out of the box except for projector. I added that because that is not out of the box. But these are the ones that come out of the box and ready to go. Devices with an agent can be deprecated to maintain inventory and regain licenses in BCM to be used for the lifecycle replacement or growth. In other words, if you have an agent on a device, you can deprecate that device when it's at the end of its useful life, and you will regain that license back again to go ahead and reinstall that agent or redeploy that agent to the new device it's replacing the one that you just retired. ITSM CMDB sync will mark those same assets as retired, as I talked about a moment ago. Client management built-in integration works with both Footprint CMDB, Remedy Force, and Remedy's Atrium. So, and one of the other things is we are just now getting involved in the Trackit world, and Trackit 2018 also uses BCM as our asset management solution. Assets without an agent can be marked as retired as a custom setting. Financial data can be added to any device record, whether it doesn't matter what it is. It's a projector, a router, a switch, a firewall. I had one customer that was in the Caribbean, and they had just suffered a hurricane and lost the 5th floor of their bank, and they tried to submit an insurance claim, and because they did not have adequate records, the insurance company denied them. So what they did was they actually added all of their physical furniture, desks, chairs, everything to BCM. So they had a complete listing of all of their assets with cost. That way then they would not get caught in that situation again. There are no additional licenses required to add or import devices. So if you want to add desks or projectors or anything that does not have an agent on board that we don't have inventory information for, you can add as many different records as you want without any additional cost. There is no limit to the total number of devices in the database. Licenses are required for agent installation and detailed inventory collected using Asset Discovery tool, which actually collects hardware and software. So what that means is if we're doing agentless inventory using Asset Discovery, and we have the inventory and for hardware and software enabled, and we actually have the credentials to get in on an operating system, and we populate that inventory, then you would be decremented the license. We can automatically delete or deprecate devices using an operational rule. This saves a tremendous amount of time and effort when you set up these rules. So if you haven't seen a device for 3 months, you can automatically deprecate those devices or delete them out of the database. So therefore, you can maintain the integrity of your information within the database itself. There are different install methods for the agent. The push, which is the built-in rollout solution. We can target devices discovered using Asset Discovery. We can target devices using device names from Active Directory if we have LDAP sync turned on and we are synchronizing those particular OUs where those assets live. Or we can import targets using a CSV file using either a device name or an IP address. So it becomes very easy for us to actually, within the tool itself, get all of our agents deployed regardless of how extensive your environment is. An individual can pull down a device, which means we can download and install the executable through a manual solution, which also gives us the ability to pull down that executable and use it in a GPO type environment for those customers that are more comfortable using GPO to do software installations. It becomes very simple for them. Or any other software deployment solution that's available to you. So if you're already using SCCM or any other software deployment tool, you can use that same executable and deploy it using an already known method. Various communication methods to limit a single executable. I've been working with this product since 2010, and the product has evolved a lot during those last 8 years. And one of the things that we now do is we have the ability to auto-select a relay. A relay is like a distribution point. So depending upon how complex your environment is, let's say that I'm working right now this week with a global organization. They have 218 various sites throughout the world, and they're using fairly high security which means that at each of these locations, they have to talk specifically to a single distribution relay, and that relay then can communicate back up to the application server in the data center. And we have the mechanism to go ahead and follow through all of that. So we can use DHCP as our primary communications method to identify what the local relay is for that location. We can use a relay list server, which in the latest release of BCM has evolved so that now if you have devices in a local area network that's isolated, you can now assign your devices locally to hold that relay list, which is a vast improvement for those more secured environments. So we've got a very myriad of methods and solutions to maintain our ability to go ahead and maintain communication throughout the life cycle of any device. We also have the availability of putting a relay out in the DMZ. So therefore, any devices, laptops that you may have that leave the network and that are not on VPN, we can still manage those devices in the wild. I call it Starbucks mode. And what that allows us to do is if we need to patch those devices, if we need a remote control into those devices, if we need to install software on those devices, a device can be sitting at a user's home and they don't have to have VPN enabled in order for you to be able to patch that device, get it up to standard. You can deploy software. The user can request software without having to be on a VPN solution. And with more and more road warriors and whatnot out there, this becomes a very viable method to maintain integrity. What can you do with an agent installed? We have complete inventory data. We can do hardware, we can do software, and a software catalog. And in the latest iteration of client management, we're using the Flexera software catalog. And the reason why, as many of you may or may not know, licensing models are, again, becoming more and more complex, and depending upon whether or not you're using Pro or Standard or Professional Plus, and you have to account for those licenses, this new catalog through Flexera gives us the ability to actually look at that addition without having to go to a whole lot of trouble to be able to do that. We can also look at connectivity. Connectivity is the ability to do switch port mapping. So if we use Nmap, our asset discovery tool, and we have the proper credentials to get into a switch, we can identify a device to a switch port via the MAC address. And when we have an agent on board, we can identify what actual device and what user is assigned to that device on any particular port on any switch. We do security inventory, security products inventory, custom inventory, which allows us to collect registry key values, file string values, or anything within a file that we may be looking for, full financial management inventory, patch inventory, and also compliance. So that whole area in blue on that screen is what we have the ability to do if an agent's installed. We have the ability to install and update software to stay compliant with the latest versions. We can uninstall non-improved software. So if you identify software that should not be on a user's machine, we can uninstall it without anybody knowing it. We install security patches, and there's over 200 product families, including Microsoft and all the third-party vendors that we support. We can import and execute SCAP jobs, which are right now DISA and USGCB SCAP jobs. We can create custom compliance rules and remediation jobs. So if a particular device we look for a device to be compliant if this particular registry key is set to this value. If it's not set to that value, then we can remediate it immediately and put it to the value that it needs to be at. We can remote control both Windows devices and Mac devices. We can do direct access, which gives us access to the file system. We can do remote registry management. We can look at the event logs. We can manage the processes and see what processes are running. And we can look at all the different services that are running on that particular box. We also have the ability to do software license management and along with software metering. We also have the ability to do OS deployment. Right now it's Windows only. We don't deploy OSs for Linux or Mac. We provide centralized management of a gold disk, and we can distribute those WIM images across to different LAN sites through an auto-sync functionality. As you know, there's an 18-month limitation for the Windows 10 updates, and 1607, for example, is no longer being supported as of April. However, Microsoft has extended another 6 months for getting patches for that particular build. It supports Pixie Boot and USB imaging, multicast and unicast options. We install drivers by the particular model that you've got. And the UEFI standard is going to be, in 2020, they won't have any legacy boot anymore. It's all going to be UEFI. So if you're using a product right now to do OS deployments, just know that you can have a single pane of glass and use client management to perform the OS deployment functions also. Mobile device management we introduced not too long ago, which again provides a single pane of glass, so you're using the same console to manage your iOS devices, which is Apple. We're not doing any of the Android devices at this time. So it does provide a familiar GUI when you do the mobile device management through this tool. Security, very important. We have extremely granular capability. So a lot of times people will provide their help desk personnel the ability to manage laptops, desktops. That way they can $dollar in the devices and they can go anywhere they need to go into if they need to manage anything within the file system. Well, there might be some L1 support people that you may not want to go ahead and give them access to particular laptops or desktops or servers, and you can eliminate that very easily through this product so that you can perform that granularity where, let's say, L4 support teams would be your highest ranking. That would be your sysadmins, your network engineers. They may have access to all of the devices and all of the capabilities of the product, where your L1, L2 might have much more limited capability. You can provide read-only access through the tool, which means they can look but they can't touch. They can't perform any actions, but they can get an understanding of what's out there. We have the ability to create public reports, which means you go to a particular URL, you log in, and then the reports that you're allowed to see will be available through that URL, which eliminates the requirement of having to email those reports or put them into a SharePoint site. And if a particular user wants to get a report, they just go to that URL and they can pull it at their leisure. We also have NT authentication directly to the console, so you can use your LDAP or Active Directory credentials to authenticate into the console, or you can use BCM credentials. It all depends upon what you're trying to accomplish. But for Microsoft Active Directory environments, we always try to use the Active Directory environment as best we can. So now it's time for me to give you a quick little tour of what I've talked about so you can get an idea of the functionality and the capability. So let me go ahead and minimize this, and let me bring up my console here. And let me collapse everything to give you an idea. So this is the way that you would log in. And you see down here in the lower right corner, we have by default the Instant Expert. And this allows new users, new customers, people that are new to the console, the ability to go ahead and create these separate elements. For example, one of the first things there is connect to Active Directory. So if a person would click on that, then they get this screen right here with a series of steps that they can go to go ahead and perform that function. So therefore, if you need remediation or you can't remember exactly how you did it 2 years ago, you can come back here and kind of be reminded. Now you can see that right now I've got 2 different domains associated with this. So it's a multi-forest, multi-tenancy capability. I can bring in any number of domains and have those to be able to be managed through a central forest or central capability. We can both bring in computer objects, so I'm going to just go here, and we can bring in computer objects and we can bring in user objects. By default, these are our user object fields that we bring in. So as long as these are provided in Active Directory, we can populate the user data with all of this information. Okay, let me go back to the home, and we can also switch to wizard mode down here. And you can see there's a wizard associated with agent deployment, OS deployment, package creation, operational rule, application management, and these wizards pretty much walk you through the process. So if I go into application management, click on the wizard, it basically says, what would you like to do? Well, I can automatically manage software, I can configure a list of applications to manage, or I can configure a licensed software. Well, let's just try this. I'm going to go ahead and hit Manage Software. I'm going to click on Add a License Unit from the software catalog. And here's my software catalog. And here's a list of all my manufacturers. So here's Adobe. Let's go ahead and, even though this is free, I'll just go ahead and add it. And so I've just added that. And then I can go ahead and put the number of licenses in here. And I'm going to go ahead and say 5 licenses. Go through the wizard. I can assign a group of devices, so I can come in here and take a look at all of the devices that I would be interested in associating it with. So let's click on Windows Workstations, and then I can hit Finish. And now it's taking me directly to this. So here's my licenses, and here's the information. I can populate this with even more information regarding the license in question. So by default, the wizard just kind of fills out a little bit. Here's the dashboard. I have purchased 5. I've installed just 1. I have 4 available that I can push out. And again, it's just that simple when you come in and you take a look at this. We also provide a section for attachments so that you can add any file system object that you want to this particular record. So if you want to put a zip file, a PDF, a .eml, or anything that justifies that you actually purchased that particular software, now you have a single central location in which, I don't know how many of you have ever experienced a software audit, but sometimes it's kind of a pain. And maybe the person that has all that information has either recently departed or is on vacation, and you don't know where all those files that show the justification as to why you've got X amount of licenses installed and where did you get all those. So here you can put them all into a single centralized location and have the ability to manage that. One of the other really cool things in regards to the application management is the software catalog I was talking about earlier. So you can see that inside the catalog, I can go ahead and pull in all of the different elements of this catalog, the creative suites. You can even see that I've got trials and tryout. So we can identify on the endpoints whether or not somebody has actually installed a trial version, and if they've installed a trial version, then I don't want to decrement a license against that, even though it shows that it's installed, but it's under a trial license. So therefore, I don't want to, call into question and decrement my license count because I've got a user out there that installed a trial version of Photoshop. So that's using the new Flexera catalog capability. One of the other pieces that we talked about is the ability to go ahead and take a look at all of the different information that we have available to us in hardware and software inventory. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what it looks like as a collection. So if I go to hardware, this is by default out of the box. This is what separates our product from virtually any other product that I know of anyway, is all of these elements come preloaded, pre-populated. So therefore, I don't have to create queries. I don't have to create reports. This is already done for me. So I can click on computer system and then by model, and it will list how many entries. Now this is a fairly small demo environment that I've got, but I've got one latitude 7480, one latitude E6430. I've got a satellite. This is a Toshiba box, 7 virtuals, and 2 unknown. No idea what those are. Let's just take a quick look. Those are my Linux boxes. And then I have the ability to also group by manufacturer, so I want to see all my Toshiba boxes. Well, there's the device right there, and there's the model of that device. So I can start grouping and organizing and looking at models that I want to retire, models that I have out there. I need to get drivers for these particular models. It's all available to me. I can also look at operating system information. And in here, I can open it by caption, and I can see how many different instances of whatever. I've got 1XP out there. I've got a home version. That's my satellite Toshiba box. how many Pro versions of Windows I've got. I have the ability of looking at all of that information, and then I can drill down into it and I can see what devices have that particular OS installed. So again, this is straight out of the box, no issues whatsoever. I also have the ability to look at the last boot time. So now I can identify devices that have not rebooted in a period of time, and I need to be concerned because why hasn't this box rebooted since February? Well, this box is really fairly old, and I haven't had it turned on for a while, so I know why that one hasn't been rebooted. But I've got an easy ability to identify that. One of the other really cool things is that anything that is on this side, I have the ability of actually pulling in all of that information. So, for example, by installation date, I can pull this in, but let's go back to let's see, I want to pull in computer system and then by model. If I wanted to go ahead and create a fast little report, I can just simply go up to File, Save, View. This will put it into a spreadsheet, and then anything that is on the right side is quickly converted to a CSV file that I can then send to whomever requested that information. And I'm done in less than a minute pulling in that information, so data calls don't bother me whatsoever. You can see that there's just a whole lot more information that's available to me. I also have the ability to look at patch management. That's kind of a big thing. I can look at all missing patches by severity. I can look at over here, I can put it into a pie chart, get a quick little visualization to see how many critical patches I have remaining. I've got 26 critical patches. I can dive into that, and now I can see these are all critical. I can take a look at which devices down here need this particular patch, how many devices need that Google Chrome update. But again, these are all critical patches that need to be deployed. These are missing, and I'm looking at it from a holistic standpoint, not just at an individual device. Missing service packs, I can look at it by affected product. So here's my Windows 10. So all of these basically installed service pack 1607, 1709. Which one are we looking for? So right now I can install the brand new 1803 Windows update to the 1709 and the 1607. Whereas I have to install 1703 on this box and I have to install 1709 on this box. I can't jump right to 1803, which will save a ton of time. Just so you know. All right, so that's on the patch side. Under security settings, we have the ability to use a out-of-the-box operational rule, but by default, all of these elements come in by default, and we can take a look at, for example, the antivirus version, what's going on there, or I can look under security products and actually get a whole lot more detailed information. For example, I can look at the installed engine version and verify that. Now, I'm looking at it from an individual device. If I go right here, well, let me go ahead and find one that's like this. I can hit go to, and I can now look at the individual device of that and look at the inventory. I can look at the patch. And now this would list all of the missing patches on this box individually. So whether I look at it holistically or whether I look at it individually, I have that ability to do that. I can also look at the software. I can look at all of the scanned applications that are out there. And it provides me the installation directory, and I know exactly what I've got. I can limit it. I can say, just show me the web browsers, so I know that these two web browsers are installed on that box. I can look at just the add remove programs and look at the installation directory of this. I have the ability to click also on the products, which is the Flexera catalog. So this is all of the stuff that's located on this one device, this Windows 7 32-bit box, and it shows me everything from a software normalization standpoint as to what's on the box. So again, I can do software, I can do all kinds of things. Before I stop the demo, I'd like to show you one of the really cool things that we have the ability to do, and that's in patch management. And we have the ability to do different types of things. We have patch deployments and patch jobs. With patch jobs, I have the ability to go in and do a set it and forget it kind of element. So for example, on Windows 10 boxes, I have my patch job filter. So I can look at my patch job filters, and I'm going to go ahead and select critical and important, security patches, non-security patches. I can also do the security tools, and I can identify what product family I want to go ahead and automatically patch. So if any of these items are selected and they match critical and important and they match security and non-security, then they become automatically downloaded and available to go. I can set my patch window up so that I can do it daily, I can do it weekly, or I can do it monthly. So if I set it for monthly, I can set it for the second Friday of every month. I can say deploy only during this time, which might be 8 a.m. until, let's say, 10 a.m. And then my patches will only go out on the second Friday. Or I can say do it weekly, and I want to do it only on Fridays, and I want to start at 8 a.m., but I want it to have no end time, which means I will go ahead and begin patching at 8 o'clock in the morning, and regardless of when that device comes back on, it will not have an end time. It will completely patch beginning Friday morning, and then at that point in time, it will patch until it's done. There is no window there. It's more of a door. And I have the ability to go ahead and look at the history of exactly what happened there, my deployment options. I have the ability of setting up what do I want it to do. No reboot. Do I want to reboot after deployment? Do I want to go ahead and reboot after log off, or do I want to enable user capability? So in today's world, there's several hot buttons. There's patching, there's software deployment, and there's full inventory awareness or situational awareness of what do I have out there, what's coming due, where is it located, where are my resources, and this product solves for all of that. I know that I did a whirlwind tour of this, but again, it's a big product that has a lot of capability, and that's why BMC has introduced it to integrate with all of their ITSM solutions to be able to be consumed. Now, whether or not it's a standalone solution, you don't need an ITSM solution to integrate it with. You can have this, and there's a number of customers that have this by itself, and then there's a number more that have it integrated with their ITSM solution because it just makes sense. So with that, I think I'm going to start wrapping it up and then open it up for Q&A and have you all ask whatever questions you may have, and that way then we're satisfying you at that point. So Dick?
Yeah, Steve, great job.
Thanks.
Now would be a good time to ask a question. So there's a Q&A box, and if you type your question in, I've got a couple I think already in, but I wanted to start out and ask a couple myself to begin with. The first one I think that is really cool is this new Flexera option, because a lot of people probably haven't heard of Flexera, don't really know much about it, but software license management can really get out of control, I think. I know especially, with Microsoft, some of the things like SQL Server, it's so confusing. There's so many different permutations. How do you know what you have? How do you know if you're getting an accurate bill from Microsoft? How do you verify that? You just kind of sign the check and close your eyes, I think. Are you seeing that's something that is a really big deal now? Can companies really say, hey, my bill shouldn't be $2 million, it should only be $1 million? Is that the sort of thing that it's designed for now?
Yes, it's designed for three different things. One is it's to give you the proactive capability, so therefore you're already aware of what's going on before an audit. Second is for you to go ahead and be burned by an audit, not be prepared for it, then come in and buy this tool. I can guarantee you, I can tell you when a company has gone through an audit and they've purchased this product for just software license management, because that's the first thing they want to get to when I show up. And that happens a lot. And then the third thing is the whole idea of being able to identify how many licenses do I have on the shelf, so therefore I can deploy them before I have to go out there and buy new licenses, so that I'm not surprised on the true up, or I don't get caught unaware by having over-installed a piece of software where I'm using a Mac key to install a license versus a KMS server or something along that line. So yeah, software license management is huge. and the tool is worth it if that's all you're trying to solve for. Honest.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and it sort of reminds me that the tool, when you say it's huge, that means there's lots of different modular components, and you don't have to buy everything at once. You can just buy everything. I think that's right. You can just buy kind of what you need.
Correct.
In your experience, what do most of the customers use, or is it all across the board? Yeah.
It's all across the board, but I would say 20% or less just buy inventory for the purpose of populating CMDB. I would say almost 60% buy the full component, so that they buy everything here, and they try to use all of the piece parts, which includes software and OS deployment as another module, and then patch management as another module, and then compliance as the final module. So you have inventory, and then you have the others that I just mentioned. So I would say that very few just buy it for compliance sake, but they use that as the add-on, which if you're using a DLP solution right now and you purchase that through McAfee or some other vendor, we also provide DLP solutions. So oftentimes I'll show them that we can do USB functionality, so we can prevent data from leaking into your environment by somebody bringing something in on USB, and they say, man, we just purchased a DLP solution. Well, okay, but I mean, it really does do an awful lot.
Well, and lots of customers have SCCM, I would suspect, too. Do some use both BCM and SCCM? Ben?
Yes. So there's two schools of thought on that, too, at least from my experience. One is they've just lost their SCCM admin, and they struggled for the last year trying to get it working after the guy left, and they can't get it working. They have no idea what he did. So then I come in to replace it. The other one is they're really good at SCCM, but it's not the total package. There's no way of validating it. It's not user-friendly. So now they have both solutions on board. So they're not replacing SCCM. They're just supplementing SCCM with this so that we can populate the CMDB. We can integrate within the ticketing system. So from within the ticket, you can deploy software. You can remote control, have a handle on that, where it's not quite so easy just using SCCM alone.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me, you say you come in. It would seem to me like customers would really benefit by having you in for at least a couple of days, a week or so, based upon your knowledge. If somebody were just to buy this software and try to install it on by themselves, they probably wouldn't have the same success if they had you come in for a short time. Is that right?
That's a fair statement. I've gone in after the fact where customers have tried to build it on their own, and they don't know what to expect. They don't know what to look for. They struggle with it. They get frustrated. Whereas when I come in, I show them exactly how to do it the right way the first time, show them what the expected results look like, teach them how to do it. And the interesting thing is I can give you the full understanding of how the product works and baseline it, get it stood up, get the agents rolled out, all within less than a couple of weeks. Whereas you try to do that with SCCM, and it's a 9-month ordeal to try to get that from soup to nuts. Whereas at the end of 2 weeks, this is already ready to rock and roll in your environment.
Yeah, well, I like the free option too with Remedy Force, right? Where you can at least get an idea what you're getting. It populates the database, I suspect, and then if you want to dive into a little bit more, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Then.
Right. You can go ahead and upgrade to Premium or Premium Plus, which gives you additional capability within the Remedy Force suite.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a question that has come in here. It says, how do I add user group tabs on the left panel? So it sounds like this is a customer that's asking that one.
So basically user groups. I've created one called Active Directory, and for example, the sales engineer group, if I go to dynamic population, go to directory server, you can see how I've already tied that up. So let me just show you real quickly how we can do that. So I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to create a user group, and I'm going to call it Demo 23, because I know I've not used that. And there's my Demo 23. I'm going to go to Dynamic Population, Directory Server. I'm going to right click. I'm going to assign a directory server. I'm going to open up my RS Lab, and then I'm going to look to see where my RS Lab groups are, or my RS Lab users. Let's see. Let's go down to that guy and click OK. And now I've just populated all of these objects in that group. And so notice that I've renamed it to my RS Lab groups. I'm going to right click over here, refresh it, and now I've got those groups. These are the underlying containers, and I don't have everybody populated in here, but you can see how I can bring that in very quickly. So it really is a very fast functionality. So that's how we do it.
Great. Another question, and I don't know if you would know this one or not, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Does the remote control work in China? I guess China must have all these unique firewalls that prevent us from remoting in.
So I do have a couple of users that have offices in China, and I've not heard from anybody that there was an issue in China, because what we do is our remote control actually passes over our same communications port. So we use ports 1610 and 1611. We have a relay set up, and our remote control is directly over that environment. So for example, this Gibbs 03 box right here, if I right click on it and I hit remote control, I'm actually reaching into that box right now, and whether it was in China or not, I'm sitting here. So you can see that the degradation means my bandwidth isn't very good. I can go ahead and send a 3-finger Control-Alt-Delete, and I can go ahead and log in. And whether this is China, Australia, or wherever, it doesn't matter, because I'm using those specific ports to communicate across. I'm not using any standard ports that would be blocked by anybody else. And over here, this remote control session, this is new to 12.7, where we have the availability to provide the user an awareness. They can minimize that awareness, or they can bring it back, and they now have the ability to actually kill the remote control session if they don't want me on board anymore. And it says the user has ended the remote control session.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, we can't stump you. Okay, next question is, can OS WIM files be auto-synced across WAN links?
Yes.
So what does that mean?
So in OS deployment, we have a master application or a master OS deployment manager. Under Members tab, we would right-click here, and we would add an image repository or a network boot listener. So if I do this, so let's say that I have let's just pretend. So help me pretend here. Let's say this box right here is my home box, whereas over here Gibbs 01 is sitting in the lab at RightStar. If I wanted to go ahead and make this an image repository and a network boot listener, all I'd have to do is click OK, and now any WIM files that I actually have would be automatically synchronized to any of my members. So if I make an update to my gold image, then they would auto-synchronize across all my members where they're image repositories to maintain the integrity of that gold image and that updated WIM file. So no longer do I have offices using outdated old WIM images. I can guarantee and assure that when the configuration control board meets and they approve this particular image, that is the one that's going to be deployed going forward throughout the enterprise.
Okay. Anything else? I don't see any other questions. Oh, wait a minute. There's a question just came in, just in the nick of time here. Let's see here. It says here, I was unable to follow the steps because I do not see the actually user group tab on the left pane. I'm also missing device groups, operational rules, and queries.
Okay, so it's a permissions issue. So
Okay.
Under global settings, and this is what we were talking about earlier, under administrator groups, for example, I've got a sales engineer group. This is for Roger and company, right? So I don't want him to blow stuff up. So we've created a specific security profile which gives them the ability to either see or not see particular objects in the console. And if you don't see anything on the left, it's because your super administrator did not grant you access to those objects. Again,
Okay.
talking about the granularity.
Okay. Well, looks like an easy fix.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, permissions are probably one of the hardest things in the application to actually get a handle on, and that's where a lot of customers struggle to begin with because they don't quite understand the difference between capability static objects and dynamic objects. Dynamic objects are all the queries that populate those particular elements. Static objects are items that you see in the console itself. So I've got some customers that only limit their L1 people to only see device groups and only be able to change one device at a time. Whereas L4 groups, the more elevated privilege, can actually make a change to a whole group of devices all at one time.
Okay. Well, the same guy that asked the question said, I'm currently a super admin for my team. So it sounds like you might need to touch base with him separately then.
Absolutely.
To figure out what's going on. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I'd be more than happy to spend 5 minutes working through that with you.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. I think we've kind of come to the end here. I